until Tom Hanks cruelly stole it from her and destroyed her family business. He's the villain of You've Got Mail.
Welcome to Keep It Fictional, a weekly podcast for book lovers by book lovers. Build your to-be-read list with Sadie, Liz, Virginia, Fiona, and Corene from the Port Moody Public Library. Warning, this podcast contains strong opinions and may cause an increase in your library holds list.
Welcome to another episode of Keep It Fictional with the Port Moody Public Library, a podcast for book lovers by book lovers. I'm joined today by Corene and Sadie. So instead of an existential question today, we're going to start with a little bit of a trivia game because Sadie is the queen of trivia at the library and Corene is extremely competitive, as we all know. So I'm just going to pit those two against one another and see what happens.
It's not fair. I usually have the answers. I usually get the answers.
Well, you get to be on the other side and see what you have subject everybody to. Yeah, no, this should be fairly easy because I think it's more a matter of like realizing, oh my gosh, this is like how old again? Because today we are going to be talking about some anniversaries. 2025. What are some of the books, movies, TV shows, etc., songs, albums that are celebrating an anniversary year? So the choices are basically like 10-year anniversary, 25th, 50th, 100. I think that's what we're going to do. So it kind of helps you narrow it down a little bit. I'm not asking for like more specific. Okay. So I think the first one should be fairly easy because, you know, every year in the beginning of the year, when the year turns into new year, they always like list of like, this is how old this thing is. So Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf.
It's 100 years old this year.
100 years old, yes. 100 years old, along with, I think, one of Corene's favorite book, one of my most hated book, Great Gatsby, also turning 100 year this year. Britney Spears album, Oops, I Did It Again.
25 years.
25 years.
Scary, but 25 years.
Right? You know, when I'm looking at the list, when I'm putting this together, I'm like, is this how old now? Like what? The movie, The Phantom of the Opera, the movie version of that.
10 years? 20. Okay, are we talking about like the Gerard Butler one where he like growls his way?
Really, I mean, I'm going to give it away.
Oh,
the
like
really
the
old one.
The original one? Oh, okay,
the
like 100 years
original,
old.
Yes. 100 year of The Phantom of the Opera. Sadie's favorite, Gilmore Girls.
25 years.
25 year, yes, 25 year anniversary of that. Queen's album, one of my favorite, A Night at the Opera.
25 years.
It's like Jeopardy. If you don't like hit the button fast enough,
I just hit every button.
Yes, 50 years, Queen of at the Night of the Dora the Explorer.
Is that 25 years?
It is, sure is 25 years.
Has she ever found where she's going? It's about the journey.
Jaws, the movie Jaws.
50 years.
50 years, yes.
Considered,
yes.
I see, this I learned from my trivia, considered the first summer blockbuster movie.
The book, The Girl on the Train.
Oh, 10 years?
10 years, yes.
Yeah.
In 10 years since that book came out. One of the things I didn't know about Sadie, but apparently you're a fan of Dan Brown. So Angels and Demons. How old is that book?
I'm going to say 25 because 10 years just doesn't seem old enough.
Yeah.
And 50 is way too old.
But 25 already still feels very old because it's just like, what? Oh, and then one of Corene's favorite series, Crocodile on the Sandbank by Elizabeth Peters, is celebrating is...
It's really old. I hold on. No. Hold on. I have to do some quick math of like how much is 50 minus 2025, and that would be 85. Oh no, it's 50. No. Is it 50 years old?
It sure is 50 years old. Yep. The musical Hamilton. See, Corene has collapsed because it's just too much to handle.
We've lost Corene, but 10 years.
10 years, yes. 10 years of Hamilton. And the first X-Men movie.
25.
25 years old, okay. And then last but not least, see, like none of these could like trick any of you. The song Baby Shark.
10 years old.
10 years of Baby
Yeah.
Shark that we've been listening to that. Excellent. Very, very good. Now that we're all feeling very old, we are going to be talking about books today. Our assignment is that we have to read a book that is celebrating some sort of anniversary. And it's nice that this is 2025 because that makes it a lot easier for us to calculate when we're talking about like books that are 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 50 years old, etc., etc. So that is our assignment today. And I will be curious to know who has the oldest book. We'll see. I am starting first, right? Is that correct? I think yes. Okay. Yeah. So sorry, audience, you will have to bear with me talking for a little bit more. So I'm going to talk about my book today. And I think if I say to everybody that today's Keep It Fictional episode will feature an experimental novel that consists entirely of dialogue, just a bunch of conversations, one after another, that's basically plotless and I would probably argue characterless, despite the fact that there's a whole ton of people in the book that if you really have to argue that there is a character, perhaps it's either the collective of it or that maybe an object, maybe more of a character, I guess. If we have to say who is the main character, I'm sure you can guess whose book it is. So my book is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year since its publication in 1985 in France, not in the author's own country because his book was banned and not allowed to see daylight in Soviet Union. And eventually this book is translated into English, and the version that I have published not in an anniversary year, but I'm counting the original pub date. This is published by New York Review of Books, and it is translated by Sally Laird, and the book is called The Queue by Vladimir Sorokin. I'm going to start a little bit with just about the author and maybe a little teeny tiny little history lesson. So as background, Sorokin is an author that I talked about on the show before. It was for the episode where we talk about books with covers in your favorite color. So I talk about The Blizzard by Sorokin, the one with the tiny little horses. And Sorokin is a controversial figure. His book, Blue Lord, among many others, and including this one who has been banned, was charged with contaminating Russian literature containing pornographic content. And some pro-Putin group has hated it so much that they created a giant toilet so that they can throw his books in it to show how much they hated this book and where they think it belonged. Not afraid to speak his mind, Sorokin is also very outspoken against Russia's invasion of Ukraine and has lived mostly outside of Russia for the last couple of years because he keeps talking. In terms of just a little bit of the historical background, the translator Sally Laird in her introduction said that The Queue is a book of a bizarrely funny saga of a quintessential Russian institution, which is the interminably long line. Lineup has been a part of the life of everybody in Soviet Union. It's just what they do every day in and day out. In the beginning, it was very much due to shortages of food and other goods and other sort of basic items. Pretty much anything that you can think of, like there is very often scenes of like just super long lineup, scenes of stores with empty shelves and all of that, starting with the bread lines in 1917. And it is one of those things that has been so iconic about the Soviet Union that it has been depicted very often in books and also in movies about this super, super long lineup. Either it is due to policies of the government or due to like war and many other reasons that created all these shortages. And so the queue has been sort of part of their life. And with the end of the Soviet Union, the queue also kind of disappeared. But it has always been a part of kind of their collective identity. And perhaps it sort of symbolized a little bit about the hopes and dreams of a nation. And as I mentioned, The Queue is a book with just pure dialogue. But unlike a play, which who's speaking, we only get these like long dashes to indicate that we are switching speakers and that's the new line. And so the speakers were never identified unless the name just happened to come up, in the conversation itself. Nonetheless, there are some recurring personalities that you will recognize them as they come up again, like the mother who's yelling his son to get back in line again. And all of these people, and we're talking about like thousands and thousands of people, are in line to buy something. Buying what? We don't really know. There are many, many discussions of it. We know that they are probably all allowed to buy two, we think, or at least that's what people are saying. And they're talking about something that they're buying that might be imported. And so they talk a lot about like where this batch might come from that they're going to get today. And they talk about a lot about the quality, what are they made of, like the material, and the color options that might be available to them today. But we never really quite find out what they are lining up for. And that seems to be quite typical. You hear that there's a new delivery, there's a new shipment, and you just go line up. That's just what you go do. Or you see a lineup, you just join it because that means something is being sold and you want to line up and get it. And so much of the conversation in this book is dominated by how fast and how slow the line is moving. Again, we're talking about very, very long lineup, one that goes around corners of buildings, down the alley, into a courtyard. It zigzags a little bit in there, and then it comes up another building and on and on and on. Where we are, at least, we can't quite see the front. So it's harder to gauge how fast we're moving and how fast we're going to get to the front so we can buy whatever it is. There's sometimes like accusations of like people pushing and shoving. And then there's other people saying like, well, no, I'm not the one who elbowed you in the face. And there's also the anxiety of like not knowing if you're going to get to the front before they sold out and how much is left, how much stock do they have today, and how long are they going to stay open for? It's all very much unknown. And there's a lot of the conversations about that. And of course, whenever there's rumors that there's like some additional deliveries while you're standing in line, people are getting excited about that. And also the general discontent and the complaints when suddenly there's buses who drop off groups of people and the people in charge are saying, oh, on loudspeakers saying, yeah, no, these people are special. They don't have to join the line from the back. They can just go get the stuff now. And a lot of complaints about the cops not doing anything about it. And then, of course, there is the roll call. There are, again, thousands and thousands of people in these lines, and sometimes you have to line up overnight. And this is not just a one-day thing. So very often you'll be assigned a number that you write down on your hand, and they will take your name so that when they reopen the line, whenever that is, because you don't want to miss your roll call, if you are not there and if you don't say presence when they call your name, then you are going to lose your spot. So there are pages of this in the book. And that shows just like this roll call and all the names that represent all the different groups in the lineup. And it's quite amusing. And because the queue is such a part of their daily life, there are very much an etiquette and sort of unspoken rules that everybody's aware of, that how you behave in a queue. And leaving the queue is something like quite regular. And all you have to do is just making sure the person in front of you know that you are behind them. And then like they will keep your spot. And there's never anyone denying that you were there when you come back. And you often have to leave the queue. You could be there for hours. You have to go to the washroom. You have to go get food. So people are very, very used to this, people leaving the line. And also, whenever you join the line, you always make sure that the person in front of you, you ask them, make sure that they are the last person before you join because you don't budge in. And so a lot of the conversation in this book surround like, where did you get that drink? If you're going to go again get ice cream, can you get me one? Like, here's some money. It's so hot today. Or like, oh, do you know, like if they have sold out of milk in the store up front, we're almost there. We almost can go there and get some milk. And do you know what time the laundromat closes? Because I wonder if I can go and pick up my stuff, whether I should leave the queue or like stay here. And so there's a lot of that, like just people talking about what they have to do and just the regular things that you have to do if you have to stand in line for hours and hours. And there is the lineup, unrelated conversations also about their daily life, the socializing, the gossiping, as Sorokin pointed out in the afterword. This is really a place where people kind of, that's this camaraderie that you are like chatting with random people, you're socializing, you're gossiping. And there's like bits and pieces, there's pages of like people just doing crossword puzzles and they're yelling out answers or trying to figure out answers together kind of thing. So all the other things that sort of happen in this lineup, it's just a wonderful microcosm in here. Sorokin also takes full advantage of the book format to represent other things that you may have to do in the queue or other things that people are doing in the queue. How is a book about a lineup so entertaining? I don't know, but it is. I thoroughly enjoy this. And I think it really gives you that sense of like the whole queue is sort of this symbol of a time when everybody's waiting for something to happen, waiting for the country to progress, waiting for something. Nobody quite know what it is, but they know that like they are stuck in a moment where it seems like nothing is going on, but that you just have to wait. So it's really very much like kind of an identity for the people that live there. So if you want to feel all the emotions as if you have been standing in line in a lineup of 1,000 people to get a slice of life of what that everyday life is like, to appreciate perhaps the little lineup that you have to line up for today, I think you might want to check out the queue. I promise you, it is a lot more entertaining than a regular lineup. And I think because the book was published in 1985, so it fits sort of today's episode. So it kind of jumped the queue, so to speak, in terms of my reading all my Sorokin books. Like I have been like wanting to read more of his books after the Blizzard, and I was told that this book and the Blizzard, I would say also, are like kind of more his more normal and regular works. His other books are supposed to be like super banana pants, include people being eaten. So of course, you know that I will have to go find those books, but I'm not going to look it up which is the one because I want to be surprised. Anyway, so I am very, very excited to read more of his works. I hope that I can get to them sometime this year. But the one that is celebrating 40th anniversary this year is The Queue by Vladimir Sorokin, translated by Sally Laird. All right. Mine is 40 years old. How old is your book, Corene?
A measly, sprightly, springly 25. So I was going through kind of like books that I had read a long time ago, trying to see if there was like a good anniversary book that I could revisit, one that I had read a long time ago that maybe I could read again now. And as we did in a previous episode, kind of see if it holds up. So I went to a book that I had read in 2016, which is almost 10 years ago. 10 years ago, which is a lot to take in as a number. I think I'm still kind of like recovering from Virginia's quiz a little bit. And this was one that was published in the year 2000. Remember the big hullabaloo? I had kind of Googled like books that were published in the year 2000, books that were published in 1995. And it was very interesting seeing what were the popular books then and what has kind of held up. Ones that kind of withstood the test of time and ones that really didn't, that were so big at a particular time and then have just kind of like faded into obscurity. And I think that this particular author kind of had a big moment in the early 2000s, and then I don't think is as prolific right now or kind of as well known. And this was kind of like her biggest book. It introduced a brand new series. I remember, oh boy, this is working at my local public library and people coming in for this series and asking for this particular author. And I just was not interested at the time that it came out. So I read it 16 years later. And it's very charming and quirky. And it's funny that you mentioned the Gilmore Girls because it's very Gilmore Girls-esque. And even though it's published in the year 2000, it absolutely has the sensibilities of like the 90s rom-coms. Like the main character has a very distinct voice that I'm pretty sure Meg Ryan could have done the audiobook for, no problem. Yeah, so it was really kind of fun to go back and look at this book and look at this series and look what was kind of considered like a fun poppy read at that particular time 25 years ago. So the book that I revisited was Adriana Trigiani's, something I've never said out loud, Big Stone Gap. And so this might be familiar to you. She had an entire series kind of centered around this. There was a movie made of it with Ashley Judd that I have not seen. Whoopi Goldberg was also in it. I haven't seen it. I don't know if you can track it down. And for a while, her books were very, very popular. And so this is the first one in the series that centers around Ava Maria Mulligan. And she is living in the very small town of Big Stone Gap in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. So this is kind of like an Appalachian story. And I know that I'm misspeaking Appalachian, so I apologize for that. Now, Ava Marie has only left Big Stone Gap once in her entire life. She left to go to university to get her pharmacist degree so that she could go back to her hometown and take over the pharmacy that her father runs. Now, she considers herself an unsavable spinster at the ripe old age of 35. She spends most of her time hand delivering her medicines to the various extremely eccentric characters of the small village. And that's where the Gilmore Girls-ness of it all really comes in. Everyone's a character. No one is just chill and normal. And essentially kind of taking care of everyone that lives in this small town. She is a caretaker. She is a giver. The town is full of like lovable wackos like Ava Lou, who runs the mobile and is lusty, I think is the word I'm going to choose. There's Fleeta, the chain-smoking pharmacist assistant who's deeply into pro wrestling. And of course, there is the yearly summer theatrical extravaganza, the Trail of the Lonesome Pine. Sometimes my reading is really hard to read. And of course, rounding out these characters is Theodore Tipton, her best friend since high school. And she's probably been in love with him since high school. However, despite all of her best moves, he does not seem to be interested. Both her and Theodore are considered foreigners, outsiders, people who weren't born and raised and can trace their ancestry back to the first people who lived in Big Stone Gap. Now, her father was from Big Stone Gap, and she herself was born there. However, her mother was from Italy. Ava Marie is still recovering from the slow death of her mother, and she really has not dealt with the grief that comes after being completely alone in the world. Now, her world is further shaken when she receives a posthumous letter from her mother. Ava Marie's really didn't get her, really didn't understand her, and she never really felt love. There is a wonderful description from the book when she's talking about her father, Fred Mulligan, and her lack of connection. She says, "From the time I can remember, he just looked through me, the way you would look through the thick glass of a jelly jar to see if there's any jelly left," which I think is kind of like a beautiful kind of throwaway line of thinking about their relationship. And it turns out there's a reason why Fred Mulligan never really connected with Ava Maria. In this letter, her mother tells about how when she was a young girl, she fell in love with another man from a village in Italy, and they made a plan to meet up together and run away and get married. And Ava Marie's mother really wanted to get married because she was expecting. However, when her mother shows up at the appointed place at the appointed time, she is also given a letter that says, unfortunately, he can't make it. So she decides to collapse on a train bench and is rescued by a lovely woman wearing a blue coat and shiny buttons who whisks her away to America to start a new life. There, this rescuing angel, also named Ava Maria, finds an ad for a small village in Virginia who needs a seamstress. She jumps at the chance and finds herself in Big Stone Gap and eventually meets kind of boring Fred Mulligan of the Mutual Pharmacy. There, they kind of, I'm not going to say the word fall in love, but they definitely get married. He understands Italian, and in her letter to Ava Marie, she says, "I agreed to marry him. It was an arranged marriage. I arranged it." And so she grows up with a mother and a father, but a father who doesn't really connect with her in any way. Now, the fact that her father, that she thought for all of her life, is actually not her father rocks her world. She is shaken. She feels like her understanding of herself and her place in the world has been completely wrong for so long. She is plagued by questions. Who is she? Who is she really? She's always considered herself a caretaker, but who takes care of her? Soon after the news get out, she's bombarded by marriage proposals plural, and her father's family is trying to steal her money and inheritance under the claims that she is not really a daughter of Fred Mulligan. She may lose her place in the world. She might lose her livelihood in the pharmacy if her family succeeds. And in the middle of all this, she is trying to arrange for a visit from Elizabeth Taylor. Oh, life is so hard. So, if you're looking for something that's extremely, I'm going to use the word twee, it's very, very charming book. Reading it again, like there are parts of it that held up. I really love the way that she writes. It's very fun. However, kind of flicking through the Goodreads reviews, it really depends whether you connect or do not connect with the author's voice. As I said, it's really like a time and a place. If you kind of watch Meg Ryan movies now, you're like, hey, relax. Constantly whining, constantly complaining, quirky but fun, but like, oh, oh. It's a lot of that energy. And I feel a lot of like modern readers, that comes off as like annoying and unpleasant and immature and inauthentic. And going through the more recent reviews, a lot of people find the voice really annoying. However, as someone who grew up on 90s rom-coms, I'm like, oh, I recognize this stereotype. Like, I recognize this voice. I recognize this tone. I really get it. And I find it funny and charming. But again, that's like a cultural shift that happened, right? These books are set in the 70s, but they're written with a 90s sensibility. She's trying to like juggle her job and her career, but also love and try to find fulfillment and self-actualization and trying to have it all in the way that Meg Ryan was also trying to have it all until Tom Hanks cruelly stole it from her and destroyed her family business. He's the villain of You've Got Mail. He is. So it's very interesting, like how humor has shifted so much, even in 25 years. And so if you are like me and you think that Gilmore Girls happened like yesterday, I think you would really enjoy this book because it is speaking with such a voice from that time. And again, it is extremely Gilmore Girls-esque. All the townspeople are charming. All of them are quirky. All of them have got something going on. The romance is very sweet. Her trying to find a connect with her family is like very nice. There's a theatrical performance. It's very High School Musical. It's sweet. It's sweet. There's not a ton that happens. And that's okay sometimes. I mean, Virginia's book is about people waiting in line, so I feel like mine had a little bit more plot than that. But if you're looking for something like calm and sweet, and that is apparently 25 years old, you could check out Big Stone Gap.
I will stick with my lineup. But it sounds like it might be a very good book for Sadie. Maybe. I can kind of see why it gets me into a movie. I think that kind of fits that. Yeah. So maybe a movie for Sadie to watch. Because I think Sadie's book taste may not be the same as movies sometimes. I don't. Anyway. So a 25 book, a 40-year book. Sadie, what have you got?
So mine is going to fit right in between those with a 30-year anniversary and one that has been made into a movie. And this book, I think it's safe to say it has been on my TBR for many, many, many years. It's a book that it just kind of seems like I have read it. It seems like a very Sadie book. And I did see the movie. I definitely have memories of watching the movie, as I'm sure many of us who grew up in the 90s do, because it is a very... It's turned into a bit of a cult classic from the 1990s. And this book takes us back, as I said, 30 years to the year of 1995. And it tells the story of the Owens family. Now, you may be more familiar with Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman in the book Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. So as I said, this is a book that I only just read, surprisingly, because it does hit a lot of the Sadie boxes. I would say that it's much more magical realism-esque than straight fantasy, but more magic than a lot of magical realism books, I think, have in them. And as I said, it tells the story of the Owens family. Now, for generations, the Owens have been blamed for everything that goes wrong in their Massachusetts town. No matter how minor or serious the issue was, the people of the town believed that the events were in some way impacted by the family who lived on Magnolia Street. This is no different for Sally and Gillian Owens. The two girls who were being raised by their aunts after their parents have died in a fire, both in their own way, craved a normal life. Now, they were given quite a bit of freedom by their aunts, who had not planned on raising two children. They were never told to go to bed before midnight or that they couldn't have ice cream for breakfast. There were very few rules at all, really, except for one. When the aunts had a visitor come to their back door, the girls were not permitted to be there. These visitors would always come at night and ask the aunts for things that didn't seem possible. Things to do with love, getting it, keeping it, making it appear out of nowhere. And the aunts would always send them away with some sort of solution, though not always one that would go the way these women thought or wanted. And even though the girls found these late night visits intriguing, a little bit exciting, Gillian and Sally still dreamed of being normal. At school, they were, at best, avoided by their classmates. At worst, they were mocked and ridiculed and bullied. The girls, who were very, very close in age, only 13 months apart, as well as being very close with each other, they were complete opposites. Sally, who was very responsible, always ensured that the family ate a balanced meal and that her and Gillian had a proper lunch each day at school. Gillian was much more wild, beautiful. Everyone loved her. She didn't like to follow the rules and was much more of a free spirit. These differences just continued to grow as the two girls got older. And by the time they were in their late teens, they couldn't be more different. Gillian, who was beautiful and wild, had a different boyfriend each night, and who eventually, when she was 18 years old, decided to leave the Owens house entirely to get married for the first time. Sally, still responsible and unable to imagine living anywhere else or doing anything different than what she was doing every single day. That is until she met Michael, who she finally opened her heart to. And they got married, having two children, Antonia and Kylie. But then tragedy strikes. Michael is struck by a car outside the hardware store where he works and dies, throwing Sally into a year-long grief-induced silent period. She won't talk to anyone. She won't take care of her children. She'll listen on the phone to Gillian, but she won't say anything. And she remains this way for a year, until one day, Sally decides she's ready to leave the house. She goes outside to the park, where she sees her two children playing under her aunt's supervision. And she witnesses the casual but very pointed bullying that she and Gillian dealt with for so long, being directed at her own children. And this is when she decides that she's had enough. She packs her bags, she packs her children into the car, and she moves them to New York, where nobody knows her. Nobody knows her family. Nobody knows the Owens name enough to avoid the house. Nobody knows the Owens name enough to whisper behind their hands every time someone walks by. She starts over again and builds herself a normal life. And she does, for many years, have a wonderful life in New York where she works at the school. And her daughters, well, they might not get along with each other. She knows that that's just part of being sisters, and everything will sort itself out as they get older. And then one night, Gillian shows up, asking for help. She's in trouble, and she needs Sally now more than ever. Now, when I think back to the movie, when I first saw it, there are very few moments that I remember, but for some reason, this stays in my mind. The image of Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman burying a dead body in their backyard. And that is what Gillian is needing help with. She has her now ex, now dead boyfriend in the car, and she needs help from her big sister. She didn't mean to kill him. She just slowly gave him poison over time, just to make him calmer, just to ensure that he didn't use his fists quite so often. He didn't drink quite so often. And then one day they got into the car. They were planning to come visit Sally. And on the way, he just simply died. And now Jillian doesn't know what to do. And so, being sisters, Sally steps in and they bury him under the lilac bush in the garden. Jillian's entrance back into Sally and her children's lives, not surprisingly, causes more waves than anyone may have thought. Jillian decides to take Sally's younger daughter Kylie under her wing, influencing her in ways that Sally really wishes that she wouldn't. The body in the backyard, who just doesn't seem to want to go away, causes a malevolent spirit, causes the lilacs to grow bigger than anyone has ever seen, and that may, in fact, bring these two sisters together in ways that they never imagined. So this is a story of family. It's a story of love, both true love and destructive love. It's a story of trauma, growing up, and independence. I don't know if it is exactly what I imagined it would be. As I said, I had very few kind of memories of that movie. I knew there was magic in it. I knew there was a dead body, but I think that it verges more on the side of magical realism than I usually like. I like something that has a bit more heavy-handed use of magic, let's say that. But it is definitely, I would say it's a classic when you kind of think about this genre in the 90s. I think that this book it's kind of one of those pivotal books in this genre. I haven't actually read any Alice Hoffman. This is the first Alice Hoffman book I've read. And so I think that if you are looking for something that is kind of like a really good representation of what like that kind of magical realism book is, it reminds me quite a bit of the Sarah Addison Allen books, which I imagine that she was probably quite heavily influenced by Alice Hoffman in her writing. And I have read quite a few of those ones. And so I think that if you like Sarah Addison Allen, if you like that kind of book, then this would definitely be a good pick for you. If you've seen the movie and you're curious, I would say do it. Read the book. And I think that the movie is so ingrained in a lot of people's minds, and Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman are Sally and Gillian Owens. I think that's just what it is. And I imagine many people saw the movie before they ever, or if they ever read the book. And so that is what the story is. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I'm glad that I read it. And I maybe will pick up another Alice Hoffman book. We will see what happens. So this is Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman.
Thank you, Sadie. So another book that has a movie adaptation. Would you say which one is better? I mean, and both of you have.
I have an opinion. Of
course you do.
Of course. The movie is better. I really do, because I read the movie first and then I read the book. I was so disappointed with the book because I think it's a matter of tone. The movie has a very specific tone. And I think we watched it like 2 months ago. It holds up. Honestly, one of like Nicole Kidman's best performances. It's so fun and so light and it's so enjoyable. And I think the book is just a little bit darker. It's a little bit like grimmer and less whimsical. And so I really did prefer the movie. I think that it ties and it does the story a little bit better. Like he didn't die from just the poison. There's also like some extenuating circumstances in it, which makes them a little bit more culpable. But yeah, I think the movie was better.
It's been so long. I had a plan to rewatch the movie after I read it, and I just didn't get to it. So it's been, I think the movie came out in 98, and that's probably when I saw it, maybe a couple of years after that. So I will have to revisit it, especially after that review, Corene. I'm curious now.
Right, great. Thank you for those movie reviews also. So now that we thoroughly feel very, I don't know, I did very, very old, knowing how things are so long time ago already. I hope that you have enjoyed some of these anniversary books. And we will see you again next week for more book suggestions and maybe some movie reviews. And we also should bring some video game reviews back like Gabriel used to do. I don't know. Then I can't represent that. I can talk about what other people are playing, but that's kind of what. Yeah. So yeah. All right. So and well, I'm sure you can do some album review, right, Corene? So,
Happy to.
that's my last question for you. One of their album is anniversary. Which one is it? I looked it up and I forgot the name, but I'm sure you remember.
Yes, it's not map. It's Oh my gosh, it's like the trilogy. Love Yourself. Like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. I know what it is, but I don't know the name of the album is escaping me because it's like it's Love Yourself, and then there's like four of them, and if you buy all four of the actual album covers, you match them up. They all have like this heart flower design, because it's all about the lore. Oh gosh, the mic. I hit my desk so hard. I'm so excited because it's 10th anniversary lore of the BTS world, and so it's all coming together. And it was it's April 11th today, and that's the day that Jin goes back in time to every single time to try and save all of his friends. So big day, great anniversary, 10th anniversary of Love Yourself.
All right, well, let's cut this off before we get another lesson, Sadie. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. If you like our show, please tell a fellow book lover about it. You can find a list of all the books we discussed in our show notes. Join us next week for another fun book chat. Until then, keep it fictional.